Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream that's hopefully going slightly better technically than the start of last week's session. If you're coming back again, then thank you very much for coming to join me again to do some serverless goodness, to build some serverless things. It was quite interesting actually in the live stream last week. There was a comment about halfway through about why streaming and coding and all them kind of things are always in TypeScript or Node or Python. So we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. We're going to write some Java code. We're actually going to use Momento. If you're not familiar with Momento, it's a completely serverless, really awesome caching technology. Paper use all that serverless goodness, and most of all, it's incredibly fast. And we're going to add that to a Spring Boot application that currently uses a Postgres database. We're going to add the caching layer on top of that to kind of minimize the load on the database, and then probably look at some write ahead and read through caching, how to actually put stuff into the cache as and when we are ready to go. So actually, before we get into the content, let's just quickly look at exactly what is going on. If I just open up Excalibur, kitchen service. Just look at this. So what's happening right now with this service is that there is a service running on Fargate. I just can't be bothered looking for the Fargate icon. And then there is a database. What can we use for the database? There we go. It's a nice little database icon. So this is actually using Neon, and it's a Postgres database there. And at the minute, every single request that comes in here is always hitting the database. And it is not the most performant thing in the world. So what I actually going to do is add Momento cache here. And actually, the first thing I think we're going to do today is to implement this as a read-through cache. So what a read-through cache will do is when a request comes in, the first thing it's going to do is going to check the cache. If there's no data in the cache, nothing there, then the data is going to go off and actually be read from the actual database. So it's actually going to hit Postgres after it's checked the cache. And then once the data has been retrieved from the actual database, then it's going to write it to the cache. So it's going to write to the cache after the data has been read from the actual database. And just to kind of give us an idea of what this might look performance-wise, let's just before the stream started, I ran a whole bunch of load through the currently deployed service, just to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at performance. So you can see here, a get to the recipes endpoint takes about 600 milliseconds, 700 milliseconds. Getting a specific recipe, so just getting one individual recipe, is about 300 milliseconds. There's some slightly longer ones there, 600 milliseconds. Let's actually have a look at the overall. So in the last hour, yeah, the P95 latency of this actual service is about 800 milliseconds. So this just gives us a good baseline to work from to actually see if what we're doing with Momento is actually going to add any better performance, which I'm 99.99999% sure it's going to. But let's actually see what happens as we start to add Momento. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to read some data from the Postgres database. After we've read from the database, then we'll write it to the cache. And of course, all of this is Spring Boot. So if you go and look at the GitHub repo, the QR code is somewhere over there, I think. You can get access to all this code. And let's actually make a start and do this. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is actually create a cache in Momento. So it's nice and easy to go and sign up. I signed up just before we got started, just so that you aren't or watching me do that. And let's go and try and create a cache. So we'll call it plant-based pizza recipes. And I actually like to deploy that EUS one. Perfect. So we've got a cache. Nice and easy. Simple as that. We've now got a cache in Momento. Fantastic. And now let's go and have a look at the Momento Java SDK. Client SDK for Java. Let's see how we go. Nice and easy. So the way this project is structured actually in GitHub is that there is the actual API. This is a Spring Boot API. Uses all the Spring Boot kind of defaults. There's this core module which contains all of the kind of business logic, the domain entities, the repositories, the services, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got this actual functions project, which is the backend functions, things that are reacting to events. I think there's only one event handler at the minute. Yes, we've got a Lambda function. When an order gets confirmed, we want to go and increment a record in the database to say that, that there's been an order, so we can keep track of how many items, how many recipes are being ordered, and how often. So we've got some Lambda functions, we've got some core business logic, and then we've got the actual API itself. And I think it's in this API, if I remember rightly, the recipe controller is using a recipe service. And then the recipe service is going to be in here somewhere, hopefully. There's the recipe service. Cool. So we actually want to add the Momento SDK to this core library. So let's just find a spot. Let's add it there underneath the Datadog things. We'll just do a quick Maven refresh just to pull in. That's unhelpful, but let's try that again. Interesting. Everything's failed to download, which is good. There we go. Now we've got. So we've got Momento. We'll come back to that later. So we've now got the Momento SDK added to the application. Let's make some more room in here. And let's go back to the docs and have a look. So we need to create a cache client. And then we've got the name of the cache. And then we've got this set method. Okay, so we want the Momento client to be somewhere inside this recipe service. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a new interface. So let's create a new Java class and we'll call this recipe cache. Because I don't want to actually, if I for some reason want to use Redis or Memcache or now Momento, I want to be able to switch this out without having to change whole swathes of business logic. So I'm going to create my own custom caching interface, which nice and simply is just going to do set key value, and then why am I return type required? Oh, of course, this is going to return void. Why can I no longer remember how to write Java code? Okay, yeah, that's it. So it's just void set. There we go. And then void object get something like that. Nice. It's going to be a nice, simple. I don't want to do void object. That's just crazy. Object. So we're going to set something, get something. We've got a nice, simple recipe cache. And then let's actually add an implementation of this. So Momento recipe cache implementation. And we're going to make this a service. And it implements the recipe cache. And we'll add the methods. Okay. So we've now got our Momento recipe cache. And then we want to add our constructor. And it's in the constructor of this service where I want to add this configuration. So we've got a final private final cache client. Nice. And that's just going to be the cache client. And then the constructor, we actually want to create a cache client. So we want to create a new cache client, credential provider from envar, and we will get an environment variable Momento API key. Configurations. What does that mean? Cache client. Oh, it's doing different. So it's doing cache client dot create final cache client. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's just try builder? No. Okay, let's just try this. Let's just go back to creating a new cache client. What does this do? Expected 3 arguments. Yes, this makes more sense. So let's add configurations dot laptop. Don't know what that means. We'll come back to that in a second. And then we want to set the default duration of minutes Let's cache things for just as a default of seconds. Let's cache things for a default of 300 seconds. So default, we're going to cache things for 5 minutes. What does that configurations do though? Public class configurations. Documentation, Momento docs. Let's have a look. Cache create, cache set. No, I want to Java. Everything starts with Momento cache in Java. Set up your API key. We'll come back to that in a second. Cache client. What does this configurations.laptop.v1 do? I wonder. We will come back to that in a little while. We've got a cache client now though, which is good. And then we can, so we've got a cache that exists. So write an item to the cache. So we want to do, let's have a look at this. We want to do final set response equals cache client dot set. And then we want to, so the name of the cache. Okay, so this gonna have the cache name as an environment variable. So we can just sub that out if we need to. And then we want to set the key and we want to set the value. And that's the thing. That's going to need to be a string and a string. I don't need a final there. Set response. Okay, so that's now set. And let's just go back and change our recipe cache to be a string and a string. There we go. So we've got our set there, and that's also going to return a string. And we'll just do for get response equals cache client dot get. Actually, I'm gonna private final string cache name. Let's set the cache name once, so we're not constantly doing that get env. There we go. And then cache name. Then we want to get the key. So what does this give us back when we get something from the cache? Get response. Why did that have a dot join? Dot join. If success. Okay, so let's take that entire thing. So if it's a successful set, then we're going to write a message cached successfully. Oh, can't spell. Cached successfully. Do I want to throw a runtime exception? Yeah, let's throw a runtime exception. And then a get response. Oh, this is quite cool. So it actually gives you back. This is quite cool. So you actually get a cache, a get response dot hit, which is quite cool. So you actually get a specific response type for a hit or a miss, which is very cool because then I can optional. This is going to return an optional string now. So if it's a hit, then obviously we want to return. Let's just actually still log the value, and then we want to return optional of. So we actually want to return that. It was not found. We want to return an optional empty. And then if we've got an error, then let's just keep throwing an error. And we're missing a return if we get right down to the bottom. Let's just return an empty. So we've got a really rudimentary caching implementation now. So we've got our recipe cache interface just with a set and a get, and we've got this Momento recipe cache. So the last thing we need to do, if I actually open up my recipe service now, so we want to cache two separate things. I want to cache all of my recipes. So if we've got somewhere in here, there's this list recipes endpoint. That's not the right trace. Let's just update that. So this is where I'll first want to try it. When we try to list the recipes, I want to I'm going to cache all of them because there's not going to be that many of them. So let's inject our private final recipe cache. And I want to initialize that from the constructor. So when this list request happens, I'm going to var cache result. The first thing we want to do is check the cache. And I'm going to cache this under a key of all recipes. And now if the cache result what's this cache result? This is a because my interface is different. So that's not going to be an object. That's going to be a optional string. Why is that not Momento recipe cache? Take that copy from there. We don't need that. So that's now returning a string. So if the cache result is present, so we've got a value in the cache, then I want to set my var, my list of recipes, recipe list equal to my object mapper. I don't have an object mapper here. Where is my object mapper? Is it up here in my API? Let's just have a look. API application, get object mapper. So I think I should just be able to inject private final object mapper. So if you're not familiar with Java, this object mapper is used to actually do JSON serialization and deserialization. So we want to do this dot object mapper dot convert value, and we want to convert my cache result dot get into a list of recipe. Now, how I can't remember how to do that. So let's tell you what, let's try. Let's ask AI assistant. When it loads. How would I use object mapper to deserialize a string, a JSON string, into a list of recipe objects? Because when I've done this in the past, you would just do recipe.class and that worked. And that's going to not like that. So object mapper, I've got my object mapper, here's my JSON. It's a type reference. Okay, that's new. Type reference list of recipe. That's no, not read value. Why? Oh, is it read value? Okay, so yeah, I didn't think that was right. Read value. Unhandled exception, of course. Let's just handle that exception. Do we want to throw that back up there? No, I think I want to try and parse that data from the cache. And obviously, if that fails, JSON processing exception. We do want to handle it, but we kind of don't. Update tracing to mark log error. Because if that fails to deserialize for whatever reason, we still want to let the rest of it, then we're just going to go and hit the database. And then if that happens, then we want to return recipe list. Return an iterable recipe list. Can we do that? An iterable. Return. It's a recipe DTR, of course. There we go. So does that, is that okay to be a list? I think it is. Yeah. Okay, cool. So just update that as well. So what we're going to do now is when this list recipes request comes in, I can get rid of all of that. Nice. When this list recipes comes in, we're going to try and get all recipes from the cache. If the cache value is present, then we're going to try and deserialize that. And if it isn't, then we're going to actually go and hit the database. And then before we return, let's just do this.recipe cache set all recipes. And then this.object write value as string recipe DTO list. And another unhandled exception. Right, just gonna let's just try catch that again because we don't. If that fails, we just don't write to the cache, and that's fine. JSON. Okay, so we've got the list request. The list recipes method is going to be called. We're going to try and get all recipes from the cache. If that fails for whatever reason, let's just for the minute. I'm sure I've got a logger somewhere in here. Log manager. Here we go. Let's just pull a logger into here so we can actually do some logging. Recipe service.class. And then, so if the cache result is present, I want to log.info cache hit. And let's just log.error e. Log the exception. If that fails, we want to just carry on. And then similarly, log.info updating cache. And again, if we fail, log.error e. Okay, so we're going to hit the cache. And actually, let's just log down here. Cache miss, just so we know that that's happened. So we've now got everything we need apart from a Momento API key. So let's go back to Momento, and I'm just going to, how do I get an API key? Generate API keys. No expiration. Interesting. Let's do 7 days just for now. I want permissions to my plant-based recipe. Read write. So this API key is going to need to be able to do both. Add permission. And then I'm just going to switch that back to there so you can all look at me for a little bit. And I'm just going to update that secret into a few different places. So I'm going to put it into system SSM parameter store so I can actually then access that from my running application in Fargate. So let's go off to parameter store /recipes/cache API key. So again, I'm just copying and pasting this into SSM parameter store so that I can use that. And then I'm also going to update my debug configuration for my Java application to set that as an environment variable. Let's add another environment variable, Momento API key, and set cancel. That didn't work like I thought it would. Momento API key. And we've just updated our API key there as well. So you can all come back and see what I'm doing again now. So we've got all of this set up. So now, fingers crossed, if I close all that and hit debug locally, this should now successfully start up locally, which it has, which is good, a good start. And then let's go off to Postman and let's actually zoom this in a little bit first. And we want to get all recipes. Let's just check this is actually running against my local. Yep, HTTP localhost 8080. So that's now going to hit my local instance of the recipes API. Internal server error. Excellent. And I've got no logs, which is also very helpful. I think it's going to be because something hasn't been mapped up correctly. So let's go and look at my core recipe service. So what's this set up as? That's set up as a service. Momento recipe cache is also set up as a service. Dependency injection for a Spring Boot interface. Spring dependency injection. Nope, it's not very helpful. I wonder what happens then. Let's just try. I've got this set up as a service. So if I just update my recipe service, instead of using the interface, let's make it use a Momento recipe cache. See if that works. Start it up. Still nothing. Okay, let's try updating my debug configuration. So in here, in my resources, set everything back to info. Let's start this up again. Hey, there we go. So we have a bit more stuff now. It's looking better. Port 8080, get recipes. Got an internal server error, but no actual error. So let's have a look at our API, main Java, our API controller, add recipe, get recipes. So we've got, okay, let's just try updating our logging. So we get a log in there. So recipe service, grab a copy of this logger, and I'm going to pop that into my recipe controller. Then if there's an error, log.error. For some reason, there was no logging in my API, which isn't ideal, of course. Let's restart that now. Do 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 do. Okay, let's try hitting that again. Okay, why is that not? There we go. There we go. Now we're talking. An error occurs just to get test key from cache, test cache. Test key from test cache. That doesn't sound very right, does it? So let's have a look at our Momento recipe cache. Did I just do some rubbish copying and pasting? Oh no. Attempting to get from cache. I know what the problem is. I've not set my cache name. Okay, just go back to full screen me whilst I just update configurations, environment variables, cache name, and the cache name needs to be plant-based pizza recipes. Apply. Okay. Start that up in debug again, and we're back in action. Do. Recipes up and running. Hit the endpoint. That's gone off, and actually, okay. So that took 1,000. Took 1.1 seconds, and that's a cache miss, and the cache has been updated. So let's see when I hit it again. 72 milliseconds. Nice. Cache hit. Okay, we have a cache. So this is pretty consistently double-digit milliseconds, a triple digit there. But, you know, Okay, so that's incredibly performant, actually. um, incredibly performant. Let's just to see how exactly that works. Let's just temporarily disable caching. I just want to check it wasn't like some weird first request to do with SSL. So we've started up again. So the first request is going direct to the database. About a second again. Hit that again. Yeah. So we've got that 600, 700 milliseconds that we were seeing in the Datadog UI. We're seeing that in our actual service as well. That is a staggering performance increase. Like that is insane. Genuinely insane. Because if I come back to my UI, to my application code, turn the cache back on, come back into here, hit that again. The first one's going to be slow. Like a 10x improvement in performance. That's insane. Absolutely insane. People at Momento, if any of you are watching, that is incredibly impressive. Very, very, very impressive. So let's do the same again now for getting a specific recipe. So we're going to follow much the same pattern. So we're going to say get the cached recipe, this dot recipe cache dot get recipe ID, and that's all I want to get. Okay, that's going to be toString. Am I being a bit dim? How do I convert a long to a string? Dun, 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 dun. I feel like it should be just like a string dot value of. Oh, that's very verbose. String dot value of recipe ID. Okay, so we're going to try and get the cached recipe. And again, let's just copy a bunch of this code. I wonder if we might try and improve this implementation in just a minute. But for now, let's do this slightly different. So cache result. That's going to be a recipe DTO recipe. And we want to return the recipe. And that can just be a recipe DTO.class. So we're going to do the same again. And then, of course, we need to set the cache if it doesn't work. So get an individual recipe. Then we're going to retrieve the recipe. Update the cache. So we've got the recipe from the database. Then we're going to convert that into a data transfer object. Then we're going to set that value in string.value of recipe ID. So we've now got the cache as well for an individual recipe. So we're caching data for the list recipes, and then we're caching data for individual recipes as well. So let's just start that debugger. Let's start it up. So again, we hit it for the first time, 1000 milliseconds, and then we're back to that super crazy, insane performance. Let's just try and get an individual recipe now. So the first one should be slow. That's going direct to database. And then we're back in double-digit millisecond response times. Man, this is impressive. Very, very, very impressive. Okay, so what else can we do here? Because we've now got data being cached in Momento. I'm actually going to start a release for this service now, actually, because I want to push this out into Fargate, so we can actually hit it with some load and just see how that impacts Datadog. So the first thing I want to do is actually open up my infrastructure project in a new window. Terminate that. So this is my actual infrastructure code for this Java service. So I've got a web service, a Java web service, and this web service here is just a custom L3 construct that just abstracts away all of the stuff around setting up Datadog and setting up Fargate. So you look at this web service here, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It sets some default environment variables. It creates some parameters, it creates the task definitions, it creates the adds Datadog, it adds the log forwarder, it adds a whole bunch of things, adds internal load balancer targets, adds public load balancer targets. There's a bunch of stuff. Go and have a look at this. This thing does quite a lot. So what we actually want to do is, as part of this web service kind of L3 construct, there's this ability to pass in this secrets, this set of secrets. And with Fargate and ECS, you can actually pass in one of these secret values, and that will actually get mounted up as an environment variable inside the running container. So you see I've got these secret variables here. I need to get, I'm going to take a copy of that. Let's just make that simple. I don't need to be a secure string. It's just string parameter attributes. And this is going to be Momento API key attributes. String parameter attributes. And then if we just come back to here, we've got this recipes/cache API key parameter, recipes.cache API key. And then we've got the cache string parameter. So what we're doing here is just dynamically loading in the parameter in the CDK. So we've got the parameter that already exists inside AWS, and we're just now loading that in from string parameter attributes. So in the CDK, we're going to load in that SSM parameter that already exists, and we're going to do that using recipes cache API key. Then we've got this actual string parameter, the CDK construct, and we can actually add that as a secret variable, and that needs to be Momento API key, and then let's just pass in that cache string parameter. So we're now going to mount up the Momento API key when as a secret when this gets deployed to Fargate, and we also need to add the environment variables as well. So env_variables.put, because we also have the cache name as well. So let's just do cache name. The name of the cache, if I remember rightly, was plant-based pizza recipes. So we've now just updated the actual CDK code so that we get the cache name variable being set and also the Momento API key. That means when this gets deployed, the Momento key and the cache name are all going to be there. So let's actually now go off and push this out. Where's my other IntelliJ window? Where is my... There it is. Did I close it? Maybe I closed it. Okay, let's just open up source. This window. I'm sure I opened that in a new window, but anyway. And what has changed in here? Check everything. Oh yeah, let's just turn off. We don't want all them logs. So let's just actually undo the changes, roll back the changes there to that. Add Momento caching. Commit that. And then we can push that. Oh, I've created a new branch. Would you look at that? Let's just push that up. And I don't actually know if this is going to start a release immediately. Let's go and have a look. GitHub plant-based pizza. I don't think it will. I think the workflows are set to only run on main. Yes, they are. So let's just manually go and trigger this now somewhere in here. Recipe services. I should be able to manually run this for my Java caching branch. And let's see what happens. Ha! Failed immediately. Excellent. Build directory is not defined in the reference workflow. Okay, let's just create a PR. Add Momento caching. Merge pull request, confirm merge. We merge that back in. Okay, so there's a problem here. Interesting. There's a problem with my CI/CD pipelines. I'll come right back up to the top level and open this up in VS Code. Let's try and debug these build pipelines. So build recipe services Java. Interesting. Static analysis doesn't need all that stuff. Static analysis only has 2 properties. Was it as simple as that? Yes, it was as simple as that. What's this whinging about? static analysis.yaml. There we go. Okay. Okay. So we updated the pipeline. Update pipeline. Oh, this is going to the branch again, annoyingly. Dun, 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 dun. So that's now I have to reserve the PR for this, unless that's automatically triggered. Of course, it hasn't. Let's create another PR. Just update the pipeline. Dun, 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 dun. Confirm merge. Dun, 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 and that should now have triggered my pipeline. So that's now going to push the new version of that Java service out to Fargate, which is cool. So now let's think about how we could add a write ahead cache, because this is going to be something completely different. Because there's always going to be one request. At the minute, there's always going to be one request that returns slower because the first request that comes in before the cache gets hydrated is always going to be slow. But this recipe information isn't something that's going to change all that much. The menu isn't really going to change very much. So we could probably write ahead of time. So the two things you got read through caches and you got write ahead caches. Write ahead caches, in my opinion, are very good if you've got data that isn't going to change very much. So you can just hydrate the cache ahead of time, and then it's all there ready and waiting to go. And actually, what we've already got inside this recipe service is we're already publishing an event when a new recipe gets created. So when anything changes about a recipe, we're going to publish an event. Now, of course, one thing we could do is at the point of actually writing the recipe to the database. So when we have the recipe service here, where we've just been adding all that caching logic, when we actually create a recipe here, we could actually add, we could actually update the cache. We could actually update the cache here. We could do that, and we could actually, set that value in the cache immediately. And of course, that's fine for the individual recipe, but we're also caching every single recipe at the same time, just to make that list of all the recipes, that page load really quickly. And we don't want to be, when we're updating or creating an individual recipe, we don't want to be then loading every other single recipe out of the database into memory, right? Because that's then going to start to affect the response time of our actual API. However, because we're publishing events already, we're already publishing recipe created event v1, we're already publishing recipe updated event, we can actually use that to hydrate our cache. So in our Lambda functions, we've already got a Lambda function here that's handling an order confirmed event. And actually, we could use this exact same process to handle a recipe created event. So I'm going to take a copy of this entire thing now. And we're going to say handle recipe created event. And I'm still going to send this into SQS. So I'm still going to have an SQS queue that's going to process these. And then we've actually got this handler down at the bottom here. This is what's actually processing the message. Again, just going to take a duplicate and we're going to process recipe created event. Processing recipe created message. So this just means I get all my trace information inside Datadog. And then when I'm handling my actual event, then I want to update that to process a recipe created event. So we're going to have a Lambda function now that's actually going to process that recipe created event. And this wrapper is going to be as recipe created event. So I've got this little event wrapper. So because all the events that are flying around are the cloud event, use the cloud event specification. We've got this very specific way. I use the cloud event library to actually parse things as cloud events. I'm not going to go deep into cloud events right now. If you're interested in cloud events is a specification for defining event data in a common way. There you go. Easy as that. So there's a library, there's SDKs and all the different runtimes for doing this. as recipe created event. So I'm going to actually now add this method to map my recipe created event. So now when that comes in, I can do recipe created event v1. And I've got this event handler service as well. This event handler service for handling different types of events, of course. Then we're going to duplicate that as well. Handle recipe created event v1 event. And then our events interface, implement that. Okay, so now we want to actually handle our recipe created event. So we, again, are going to need our recipe cache. And we're going to need to construct to inject the recipe cache. So now we've got this recipe created event v1 event. Get recipe out. Cool. So we can actually load the individual recipe from our recipe repository. Get find by ID event. Get recipe ID. So the first thing we want to do is cache individual recipe. And then we want to update cache of all recipes. So we can steal that same piece of code from our recipe service, core recipe services. Where is it? Get recipe. We go. So let's now go back to our function source, into our function configuration, into our event handler service. And we want to set recipe get event.get recipe ID. Got an object mapper. That's surprising. Private final object mapper. So then we can update cache of individual recipe. And then I want to load all my recipes from the database. So var all recipes equals this.recipe repository .find all. And then again, I want to steal the code I've already written to actually update cache of all recipes. Updating cache of all recipes. I'm going to set that to all recipes. So what we're doing now, we're going to handle an event that this service is publishing. So the recipe service is going to publish it or recipe created event whenever a recipe is created. And then we're actually going to handle that inside the same microservice. And there's probably a later stream here to refactor this to use public and private events, because this is now using a public event that another service might be using. There's a video on my YouTube channel about public and private events if you're interested. That can come later, because now we are handling that and then returning true. So when a recipe created event happens, we're going to load that individual recipe from the database and cache that ahead of time. So we've got the recipe there ready to go. And then we're actually also going to load every single recipe from the database and set all of the recipes. We're going to cache all of the recipes whenever a recipe changes. Just ahead of time, we're going to load everything into the cache ready to be retrieved. Okay, cool. So the other thing I think I need to do actually, where am I using an object mapper elsewhere? Yeah, that's exactly what I thought I needed to do. So in this event handler service, rather than using constructor injection there, I'm going to create a new object mapper, just like that. Let's just check that that's all set up right. Yeah, so I want to do that same configuration in my event handler service. There we go. So that is nice and easy. So our event's going to get published. That's then going to hit EventBridge, and we're going to hook that Lambda function up to EventBridge and use that to then handle that event. Cool. So we've now got that additional event handler. So now what we need to do is actually update our infrastructure as code. But let's just see where our deployment is up to. Oh, we're deploying to dev. We are nearly deployed. Let's go and have a look at how that is getting on. ECS. Recipe service tasks. 3 minutes ago. So our new recipe service is now there and ready to go. So let's just check. Let's switch our test API endpoint back to be the main one. So this is now hitting the real API in Fargate. And as we'd expect, the first request is going to be slower. 1.1 seconds, 800 milliseconds. Ha! Now I feel like that isn't actually hitting the cache. That's my prediction. That isn't actually hitting the cache. Why would that not be hitting the cache? Let's have a look at the configuration. Recipe service, environment variables, DB connection string. Interestingly, the environment variables aren't there. Interesting. Very interesting. Revision 28. It's revision 28 that I would expect to see. Cache name, Momento API key. So why has that not recipe service tasks? It's version 27 that's running. 28. So it tried to deploy it, and then it stopped deploying it. Code uncompressed size is greater. So it's rolling back. It's rolling back because of my Lambda functions. My Lambda functions being too big. Helpful. So it deployed, and then it didn't deploy. It rolled back, which was helpful. So we've got everything mapped up now, though. So let's just open back to our Lambda function code, and let's have a look at what is going on in here. So we've got our background services, got our Lambda function. Recipe function. So our Lambda function is too big. And I was trying to work this out last week, and there's a challenge with these. The size of my Lambda function being too big when I include the Datadog layers as well. So what I'm just going to temporarily disable that. And then we want to create a second Lambda function. Background services. I want to create a second Lambda function here. Recipe created. Actually, you know what? Let's just get this working first. Let's disable the layers so we don't have any layers. We want to push this out. Okay, helpful. So all I've done is disabled that. I'm quite happy. Let's just check that this builds. No POM in the directory, as to be expected. Let's just check that this all compiles. We'll come back to my, there we go. Require function test.java. Function test. So because mock recipe repository, we want to mock recipe cache. I want to pass in a mocked cache. This.recipe cache equals Makito. I think it's my favorite mocking library, Makito. Which is quite fun to say, isn't it? Class. We've got the recipe cache in there now, and then that should hopefully compile, and the tests should pass because that's not going to do anything. Running the test passed, excellent. There we go, build a test. So we know that's going to work now. So let's actually just push out temporarily remove layers. Temporarily, we're going to remove the layers for the lambda functions, push that out, and then I just need to go and create a pull request, provide Java caching, create the pull request. Come on, merge the pull request. There we go. So that's now going to re-release. I need to come back to the CI/CD at some point because it's a bit frustrating when the lambdas fail to deploy, and that then causes my ECS task to roll back as well. But anyway, that's deploying again now. While that's deploying, let's just set up the rest of our infrastructure. So we can leave the layers disabled for now. But we need to add this second lambda function. So we basically need to copy basically all of that actually. And we want to create our recipe created handler function. This is going to be the recipe created handler. Java 21, all that's the same. So this Lambda environment is going to be the one difference because the way that Spring Cloud functions work is that you can have multiple multiple functions in the same jar file that gets compiled, and then you set this routing expression to be the actual method that you want to use. So we have got, I guess this is the default Lambda environment variables. So all of our things want to have, and then we need to add one additional environment variable for each of them specific ones. There's a way to do that somewhere in here. Base environment variables. Where else are they used? There we go. Put all. So we've got our default environment variables, and then we want to say Lambda environment. Order. What do we need here? Map of string and string. Order confirmed environment variables is a new hash map. And then we want to say order confirmed variables dot put, and then we need to put in our routing expression. And then we say order confirmed environment variables dot put all Lambda environments. We copy all them in there as well, and then that order confirmed environment variables is going to be there. Okay, Spring Cloud Functions AWS routing expression. Let's have a look. Routing, function routing. Message routing callback. I want to do environment variables. Another one being of type function. Spring Cloud dot function dot definition. AWS function routing. Here we go. Spring Cloud. What's the difference between the two? Has more than one bean of type function. Do we have more than one bean of type function? Yes, we do. So I need to set Spring Cloud function definition equal to handle order confirmed. I'm sure it's routing expression. Let's do that instead. Spring Cloud routing expression. And then the same again. So we've got our order confirmed environment variables. Then we've also got our recipe created environment variables. Just realized we've not had any music. Any music for all of this yet, have we? Background music. Let's just turn it down a little bit. So the routing expression with our recipe created environment variables wants to be our two environment variables now. Um, Make sure we've got all our tags, all our permissions, and then also order and handler function. Where did that order come from? So, let's create a queue for all the functions. Queue props. Queue. So we've got a queue props. So what does this want to be? I think it's recipes. Remember, we're reacting to our own event here, so we can actually go and have a look exactly what is getting published. So the source is recipes.plant-based pizza. The detail type is recipe.recipe created v1. Recipe created v1, and the queue name is going to be recipes recipe created event. Then we've got our recipe created queue. That's then going to be the queue for our new Lambda function. So we've got this recipe created Lambda function now that's going to handle that recipe created event, and then that's then going to go off and actually load up our cache ahead of time. So the other thing we're going to need, background service props. So we've got a secret and a string parameter at the minute for our database connection data.key. So we're also going to need one here for Momento API key. That's also going to be initialized from the constructor. And then we want to add a getter for that as well. Create getter from Momento API key. So as well as actually adding, this is going to be for props.get Momento API key.grant read to our recipe created handler. So our recipe created handler is also going to need access to that Momento API key. And it's also going to need the environment variable created. So let's set the Momento API key environment variable to be the props. How do I set my database connection? Props.db parameter name. Interesting, but I want the value. This needs to come from an environment variable. Props get Momento API key. Let's just, please don't do this at home, people. For the minute, we're just gonna set the API key for Momento as an actual environment variable, just for the minute, just while we get this working. Please don't hold your API keys in environment variables. Just don't, please. So now we have got the name of the cache is what I'm looking for. Plant-based pizza recipes. And obviously the name of the cache needs to be that. So we're now setting the Momento API key and the cache name for a recipe created event, and that's just going to be done on the fly. Not the most ideal situation, but it's functional for the moment. Okay, then we need to pass this prop in, so it comes after the connection string parameter. What's it called? Cache string parameter. Momento API key. Let's call that something what it actually is, and then same again here. So we've now created our background service as well. So we're now going to get that new service that has Momento all configured. Let's see how this is getting. Version 29 is running. So this should be our version 29. Okay, nice. So the version of our task that is now running is the one that has Momento. Let's try hitting it, see what happens. So we're now hitting that real version again. Again, we'd expect the first response to be kind of slow. Boom. Look at that for a performance increase. So let's now hit another load test. So I've got this nice little step function I can use. I don't want 100. Do I want 120 iterations? Ah, screw it. What's the worst that could happen? So what we should now see, if I go back to my real-time traces, we should now start to get a whole bunch of traces coming in here. So you can see before 1505, this is kind of just after we started. We've got 500 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, 700 milliseconds. Let's see how this improves as we go forward. Look at them numbers. Look at them numbers. Double-digit millisecond response times compared to 500, 600, 700 milliseconds previously. 16.1 milliseconds response time. And look at what's actually happening. So this is going to have the Momento cache in here now. If we just come along this way a little bit. Post. Oh, that's the post. Wait, why is that a post? Put events. Why is that sending events onto event bridge? Oh, of course, yeah, we only want to see the recipe service. Yeah, so here we are. So we've got the recipe. So this is a bigger trace going on. So there's a request that came into the kitchen. The kitchen's going to have to retrieve. So this must have had 3 recipes on the order, and you can see that the cache, 7 milliseconds. It took 7 milliseconds for the data to be retrieved from the Momento cache. It's insane. Absolutely insane. 7 milliseconds. Okay, so we've got. Look at that. Look at that. It's still coming in. The trace is still coming in. That latency is insane. So let's actually go and have a look now at. So the past hour, the P95 latency before we did any of this was 883 milliseconds. So let's just look at the last 15 minutes. The P99 latency. Okay, it's still going to be high. I want to try and see the average latency though. Latency. Let's try and no. Because the P95 is still going to be. I wonder if I do the last 5 minutes. 550. Okay. I want to try and find them slow traces. Now this could give it to us actually. Let's have a look at the past hour. Big spike there. Then you can just see it start to taper off at the end here. So the P90 there, the last few minutes. I'll make this graph bigger. Let's go and save the dashboard. I'm going to go and create a dashboard. Dashboard recipe service dashboard. I want a time series and I want APM service recipe service show average duration. Okay, let's see how this looks. Save that. So that big, what's that big 6-second spike? Okay, but anyway, so we can kind of see it here. So you've got previously we had 500. So this is obviously before we implemented all the Momento things. You've got an average duration, 500 milliseconds, 600 milliseconds, some odd random little spikes, not to be unexpected. Another random little spike. I guess that's just after I deployed things. Then look at this average duration now. Previously, before Momento, after Momento. 10, 11, 12 average duration. So good. So good. That has now finished deploying. That's insane. Is this still actually doing anything? Are we still getting traces coming in? 1411. Yes, we are still getting traces coming in. Still double-digit milliseconds. Absolutely insane. So let's just finish off this write ahead stuff now. So we've got recipe context pizza, recipe created. So we've got our queue that's reacting to stuff. So let's just go on, merge this, add write ahead cache. And we're going to push that. And let's actually go and merge that PI now. New pull request. Java caching. So we're actually going to add here that new functionality to add the write ahead cache. So whenever a recipe gets created, we're just going to auto hydrate that into the cache just to make sure that everything is there and ready to go. That's in. Let's just wait for that to deploy now. I just can't believe that. Let's go back to my dashboard. Where's my dashboard? Interesting. We've got another little spike. I wonder what that is. A random little spike here. View related traces. Yes. What are you doing? 1.5 seconds. Because previous to that, so we've got some. Yeah, so that was one that didn't hit the cache. And then it took a second. Yeah, so we're going to get some things that don't hit the cache, to be fair. There is some 1512. There's some quite a lot of stuff going on here that's not hitting the cache, though, which is interesting. We've not got some kind of rollback happening. Recipe Java service. Tasks. No, still version 29. How weird that we've got the odd thing just not hitting the cache. So get recipes. Let's just hit the endpoint again. If I hit it here, yeah, so we're getting the response that we expect. Double digit. Well, you're bound to get some. We're bound to get some requests that don't. Let's look back over the last hour. Yeah, so apart from the little spike, this is when Momento happened. We have a little bit of spike in performance here, which is odd, but not crazy. But that beforehand, 500, 600, 600 milliseconds, 700 milliseconds, down to 6 seconds. I wonder how many requests we've actually had. Let's add a time series. I just want to know how would I do this actually. Let's just cancel that. I just want to know how many requests received. So that's my traces. Service. Recipe service. So in the last hour, there's been 429 total requests. That doesn't sound like a lot. That might be right, let's be fair. Yeah, so it's these random. So odd. The 6 spans sounds right, because that's when we're hitting the cache. And then you've got this, which is a collection of a whole bunch of other services, which kind of makes sense. And you've got this. So where did this come in from? Datadog synthetics. Interesting. That shouldn't make a difference. But our synthetics have detected a slightly slower response, which is interesting. Synthetics. Here we are. So we're going to hit recipes from 4 locations every minute, and the response time should be less than 2,000 milliseconds. Every now and again, it isn't. Most of the time, it's extremely successful, which is good. So that's now that we've got the cache in place. Actually, let's update this synthetic. Edit test. I still want to hit that endpoint, and I'm still going to do a few different places, but I want to actually response time. I want it to be less than a second. Save that. So I want that to be, it should be less than a second. I don't really need to run it once a minute either, actually. Edit test. Run test every 5 minutes. Save. Okay, so we're going to run that synthetic now. And let's actually edit to here as well. I think it's going to be in here. Monitor summary. Is it in a monitor? Monitors. Synthetics. Yeah, it's going to be failing a lot because I need to disable that actually. Anyway, so how is this Lambda deployment going? It's still going, which is good. Let's check CloudFormation. Update in progress. So this is just adding the write ahead cache now, just to make sure that that all comes through. Okay. So this was a reasonably successful stream actually, because we now have caching implemented. If we need to handle that recipe updated event, so actually when a recipe gets created or updated, we want to handle it here. So let's just wait for this to finish updating. Has it created? Does the Lambda function exist yet? Lambda. Recipe. Order confirmed. Recipe created. Here it is. We've got a recipe created. 72 meg. Wow. Java's big. So we should have. Let's just switch back to this camera. I'll just check environment variables, cache name, API key. That all looks good. Let's just bring you all back. I should be able to test this now, and this isn't going to work, obviously, because the payload isn't going to match. But I'm just going to hit a test here. Runtime exited immediately. Runtime exit error. Exit status 127. What is exit status 127, I wonder? Oh, because I've still got my... okay, let's just manually fix this. In here for the minute, because I've got my handler set to my Datadog wrapper, and the Datadog layer is no longer there, which means that the Datadog wrapper no longer exists. Let's just manually delete that. We'll come back to re-adding that at a later date. I need to find a way to generate smaller Java Lambda functions because they're pretty crazy at the minute. Let's test that again. This is quite fun to watch, actually. So this is a background Lambda function that's processing a message from a queue, so it's not a huge problem, but this will probably take a good 30 seconds to start up. And it's kind of fun. We're adding caches, we're making things fast, and then Lambda itself takes 20, 30 seconds to cold start. And this is the benefit of using Fargate and Lambda. You can have some stuff running in Fargate nice and quickly. No object mapper available. No qualifying bean of type. Expect at least one. Oh, that's because I've not set up object mapper. So let's fix that. Java recipe application. need this bean here. We also need to drop that into our Lambda function configuration. Object mapper. There we go. That allows us to configure object mapper, which means I probably don't. Let's leave that as is for the minute. So that gives us object mapper. Now let's actually, just while we're in here, go and update our environment variables. Just temporarily remove the Datadog wrapper, just so that we're doing that properly. And then we'll just commit that again. Update wrapper type. And commit messages become less important when you're working on something on your own. Push that out. We need another PR to make sure that actually goes through. Pull requests. New pull request from. Definitely not from there. That would be crazy. Java caching. There we go. Create pull request. Dun, dun, dun. Come on, we can do this. There we go. GitHub. Thank you very much. That's merged. Cool. Drop that. That's going to be. I still needed that. That means there should be another pipeline run happening. And our first one, CloudFormation, update complete. So that's now deployed. Cool. How are our recipes service dashboard? So we're still a little bit all over the place. That's confusing things. So that's going to be something different. I'm sure that's going to be something different. He says view related traces. Yeah, so you've got this 11.8 seconds here, and that just doesn't. So that's then going off. It's actually going back 11 seconds. Wow. That's all the same. 26862. So yes, that's all the same trace basically. That's so weird. There's definitely something odd going on here. That's meaning the odd trace every now and again is taking forever. Like 11 seconds. That's just crazy. So there's definitely something weird going on. That means sometimes we're not getting the cache. But in the most part, if we look back over the last hour, you can noticeably see the drop off when Momento was added. So there's definitely a big improvement. Like we're talking like 700, 800, 600 down to single digit milliseconds. Oh, it's fun. It's just fun, isn't it? It's crazy. The guys over at Momento are doing some crazy things with the performance of. It's just impressive. Super impressive. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested in Momento, the docs are really good. And there are SDKs in a whole bunch of different languages. Look at all them SDKs. Client-side SDKs as well. Yeah, so Momento's got topics. We'll have a look at Momento's topics. I might see if I can get Alan Helton on actually to come and help me. Have a look at Momento's topics and do some front-end, back-end communication type stuff. But there's so many. JavaScript. What even is that? The .NET SDK. That's an interesting. I've never seen that .NET logo before. Python, Java. Is that Kotlin? Kotlin. Go, PHP. What is that? Elixir. Some support here. I'll tell you that much. Rust. Good old Rust. Ben Powell's been doing some stuff with Momento and Rust recently, actually. If you're interested in Rust and Momento, this is definitely worth checking out because that is performant. I'd really like to see this right ahead cache work, and we're just waiting for this CI/CD pipeline to run. I'd really like that to be done before we close off for today. So let's awkwardly sit around while we wait for that CI/CD pipeline to finish. I actually might. So we've got code duplicated in a couple of places now. I actually might. Where's my recipe cache? I might update this interface rather than being a generic caching interface. I might do set recipes string key list of recipes, and I might make this a bit more explicit, actually. List an optional list of recipes. Get recipes. Because although there's not actually going to be that much of an implementation here, and it means it's all centralized in one place. So we're going to change this around. We're going to get these really specific methods on here, and I want to get rid of that generic set and get. Momento recipe cache. So I might still keep them nice and generic inside here. So we'll have a private on there and a private on there. So we've got this get. So we've still got these reasonably generic get and set methods. Just to make this a bit more specific, we're going to have get recipes, set recipes, go to a recipe service. Pull that out of there. Which was that? Was that get recipes? Where have we gone? Get recipes. Yeah, so get recipes, set recipes. There we go. Let's add a logger, log manager. And let's do this dot set. Need an object mapper as well. Private, final, object mapper, parameter. Yeah, so then we're going to centralize all this logic. And then this in here, where I just pulled that code out of, then becomes this recipe service set recipes. Actually, we don't even need set recipes. Should really. Doesn't even need that because set recipes. Get recipes. We know the key. So we don't need that. We know what the key is going to be. And then for get recipes, basically all of that. Paste that in there. Paste that get all recipes. Return optional of. Just get a cache result. What is cache? There we go. So we've got a cache hit, a cache miss. And if we get all the way down there, return optional empty, which then means cached recipes becomes this dot recipe cache dot get recipes, and then if the cache recipes is present, return cache recipes dot get. Simplifies that somewhat. And then do the same for our individual get. Where is it? Get recipe. There we go. So when we get an individual recipe, pull that out. Get recipe. This dot get key. Now let's call that recipe ID actually. Recipe ID. We've got the cache hit. Returns optional of. It's some really inconsistent casing in Java. Sometimes it's uppercase, sometimes it's lowercase. Oh, well, we don't actually need that out. Let's keep it the rest. Then it's going to fall right out to there and return optional empty. And then we're going to say vart cached recipe equals this dot recipe cache dot recipe, the recipe ID. Then again, if cache recipe is present, return the cached recipe. And if it's not present, then we go off and do the other stuff. And again, finally, we're going to do the setting code there. Set recipe. This dot set key. And we actually just need to. We don't need that, do we? We just need that. Recipe dot get ID recipe, and then our cache, because we don't need the key when we're setting the recipe because we already have it. So that comes in there, that comes in there. And if we get all this way down, then set recipe DTR. There we go. Nice. No, it won't be null. Okay, so we've simplified that caching logic now. So now we've just got set recipe, get recipe. Nice and easy. Let's just update that in our source and our event handler service because this is going to be broken now as well. There we go. So update cache of individual recipe, set recipe. Where's that recipe service? Look at that. We're going to find it, then cache it. Then we're going to get all recipes. That's because it's not. This is annoying. Where's my list method? Because now we need to do that, don't we? Because it's going to come from the database as just a recipe entity, but we actually want the recipe DTR. Just do all recipes. So that's the recipe DTR list. Do we still want to? We still want to sort them, don't we? So what we're doing there is just sorting the recipes by how many times they've been ordered. Then we can update that cache as well. Cool. So we've got a cache in there as well, which is nice. Just check that it all still compiles. Looking good, looking good, looking good. Perfect. The caching abstract. What's that release game? It's been deploying for 8 minutes. Lambda function updated. That's good. Go back to here. This is the right. Where is my lambda function? So now we've got the lambda function. Switch that for SQS event. Bam. See if that goes now. And we wait for the cold start. Is this still going? Yeah, so we seem to get this big jump. I don't think that's real, actually. I think the big jump is when the app first starts up. I don't think it's real. Because this is just odd. Like we're hitting the cache, hitting the cache, hitting the cache, hitting the cache like 4 times there. Which is odd. Property or field handle recipe created event cannot be found on object of type. Okay, something's not right there. Let's just switch back to this view while I go and have a look. My environment variables, routing expression. For some reason, the routing expression is not correct. We've got handle order confirmed event, handle recipe created event. I don't think that's right. Spring Cloud functions examples. Spring Cloud functions. Spring Cloud functions samples. function AWS. AWS with routing. So I'm just going to have a look at how this actually works. You can provide the Spring Cloud function definition. So I did have the wrong environment variable name. So I was using an environment variable called Spring Cloud function routing expression, which should be function definition. So I'll just update that manually for the minute. Test again. And just go and update that in our infrastructure as code. So we've got this Spring Cloud function routing expression. It should be function definition instead. And look at that. We had something that happened. It failed, but it happened. So now this means we should be able to hit this Lambda function and recognize token. Hello. Hello. So now if I go and create a recipe, it should work. So let's just log in again, just pull that back. I need to log into the service as an administrator, because only admins are allowed to create recipes. Just update my authentication tokens. Close all tabs. So let's create a new recipe. What should we call this? Let's have some mozzarella sticks. How much would you pay for mozzarella sticks? $4.99. Category is sides, and the ingredients are just a portion. You get 10 mozzarella sticks. Very slow. 7.42 seconds. Okay, there's definitely something weird going on inside here, but it's all good. We've got this looks like it worked. So if I go and look, I've turned off Datadog because of the size. Let's just go and look at the CloudWatch logs. Promising. Function invoker received processing message. Okay, that was the last one. Expected there to be more SQS. Let's go and have a look. Recipe created events. There's nothing in there. Then it's not 1435. No, that's not it. So that's my unrecognized token. Hello. So for some reason, it's not being triggered. So let's go and have a look at our event bridge rule on plant-based pizza events. And I'm interested in recipes. And we've got two. We've got order confirmed and recipe created. And that should be recipe.recipe created v1. HTTPS recipes.plant-based pizza. Really, that should work. Let's go and look at our traces for the recipe service. 7.36 seconds. Why did it take 2 seconds to go to EventBridge? It's crazy. Anyway, so the post definitely happened to EventBridge. We've got all the stuff that we expect to see here. That all looks good. So the put to EventBridge definitely happened. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Source main. Nope, it's in core. Messaging event publisher. I think my source is wrong. You already create this dot source. This dot source is recipes.plant-based pizza. Interesting. With type recipe created. And this is all right in here. Detail type recipe.recipe created v1. source. Oh, it's not because. Let's just drop that slash. Again, doing things click opposite. Just because I can't wait for the. Okay, so we've now dropped that slash. God, I need to create something else now. What else do we want? Oh, arancini. What's arancini in the fridge, actually? Yeah, I'll do $4.99 again. Man, arancini's nicer than that. I'll go $5.99 for arancini. You only get 6 of them. So that's happened this time. Still nothing in SQS though. Unless it's happened really quick. Dun, 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 dun. Ah, nice. So we did get it. I heard him trying to convert this from class JSON node. Okay, we have something. So we got the message being processed, and for some reason, okay, so we need to fix that. We need to update our infrastructure as code to handle, remove that slash. And then for some reason, we've got an invalid event payload. Where's my CloudWatch logs? So here's what we've received. Where's the body? Detail. So that looks correct. So let's actually go and add a test. So if I go into my source, into my test input, new file, test recipe created input.json. So we've got our test data there. And let's just write another test. Given recipe created function executes should return success. So we've got a message set body data. Where does that data come from? Data. Oh, that's not so helpful. How about I just not read the file? This must get really crazy down this far. Put JSON inside JSON. We could just try, actually. Private final recipe created event data. We've got the version. It's mostly just this data section here. So all I really cared about is the data section. So it's just a recipe ID. Recipe ID 17. Get rid of that. Okay, recipe created event data. And then I can add my test, given recipe created function executes, set message ID, hello2. And then this one to process recipe created event. So now we're going to run a little test here. And I would expect this test to fail. So it's true, actual, false. Excellent. And it's false because it can't convert JSON node to recipe created event v1. That's good. Why? Why can it not convert that to recipe created event v1? Is it because order confirmed events? I wonder if it's because there's no setter. If we look at that, it's also not final. So let's drop the final. And let's add a setter. Set recipe ID. This stuff. Oh, I wonder if it. I think I know what it's going to be. I think it's more likely to be that. Let's just get rid of the setter for a minute. Make that final again, but I think we need the constructor. Yeah. tests. Okay, still failed. No such element exception. No value present. That's helpful. Let's stop it being final. And let's re-add that setter. Again. Okay, no such element exception. That function configuration. Process recipe created. Process recipe created event. We get process message. Wrapper for as recipe created event. Event. I think there's something in here. Message.get body is going to be a hash map. Get instance. Wrapper.get detail. So what's different in here? Version, detail type. Nice that big. No, it's just longer. Detail type, got the account, got the time, got the resources. Detail, spec version. Contact example, that's all fine. That's all fine. Got the trace information. Data, recipe ID. 17. That all looks okay. Log the error exception. Can we throw? So why can't we handle that event? It's a really unhelpful error message, to be fair. But log.error exception. Print stack trace. I want to print the stack trace. Oh, it's a void. Okay. Let's just try that. We're going to have to stop shortly, but this has been fun. Trying to work out why this write ahead cache isn't working. Ironically, it's not the cache that isn't working. Explain with AI. What does that do? An optional get. Okay. Event handler service Java 89. Oh, of course, because AI actually, would you look at that? That was very helpful. So because in my test, I've not actually, that needs to return 17. Because my recipe ID up here is 17, my mock also needs to return 17. So this isn't actually an issue with my code, it's an issue with the test configuration. So now I think this should work better. Haha, completed. Excellent. So we've now got something like a write ahead cache working, I think. Let's just try deploying this again. So I don't think this is going to deploy, but before we do that, MVN clean. That's not going to work. Just check everything's going to work. Yep, it's all about. So we now have update event pausing in write ahead cache. Push actions. No, pull request. You pull request. So that should now work successfully once that's merged and deployed. So that is, I think, all we've got time for today. But let's just have one more look at this dashboard just to see Recipe service dashboard. Past hour. Let's go past day. Okay. Not as helpful. Past hour. How long have we been on the stream for? Past 4 hours. Yeah, so these big spikes are very weird. I think these big spikes are deployments. When a new deployment happens, suddenly the latency goes crazy. So we're going to have to check that. But it's only very brief. It's like one request. But if we look at this here, so you've got 500 milliseconds. This is pre-stream. This is when I'm sat around trying to implement Momento. We implement Momento in just under an hour. This is the deployment. There's these weird spikes, which is whenever a deployment happens, seemingly. Had the deployment here of the first version. That didn't quite work correctly. We deployed it again. Here, there's a new deployment. Post Momento, our average duration for this response time is 12 milliseconds, 6 milliseconds, 9 milliseconds, compared to 600, 700 milliseconds previously. That is a pretty successful stream, if you ask me. Let's just go and come back. Oh, hey, Martin. How's it going? Just about to finish up, but hello. Yeah, so if we look back at the last hour of traces that have come in, we've got these odd, weird ones on deployments. So it's related to... Yeah, who knows what's going on there. Got the post, but if we look at these gets, the performance... 74, 42, 25, 19, 18, 20, 22. Seriously fast. So there's work to be done here. There's work to be done. We've still got some requests that seem to be taking... They're almost like circumventing the cache completely, which is weird. Don't know why that is. It seems to be related to the synthetics, but there's no reason why the synthetics would make things any different. But aside from that, this is just insane. 13 milliseconds response time. Very happy with that. And that is probably all we have time for today, because I have places to be and things to do. But check out the source code. All this has been, as you've seen, has been working. This has all been committed. This is all in the GitHub repo. The QR code is... I always get this mixed up. There. This is easier on a live stream than it is on YouTube. Go and check that out. Well, that's Momento, serverless caching, Java. And I'll probably add this in more places. Like Momento is just so easy to set up and so easy to use. We'll certainly be adding this in more places as we move forward. But thanks everyone for tuning in, for watching along, and I will see you all next week. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week. I really fancy doing some Rust. Maybe we'll do some Rust. Maybe we'll rewrite a microservice from .NET to Rust next week. Let's see. We'll see how it goes. Ciao, everyone.